We're also starting to understand nature has real value. Carbon, we already figured out. And carbon is moving very quickly into a system where it's going to be very close to a currency. Basically, being able to take a ton of absorbed or sequestered carbon and being able to create a forward pricing curve with financial service architecture, documentation. I just came out of a meeting this morning how we're trying to accelerate that. To be quite honest, not to get very boring, but we're on financial topics and things, but they're going to be derivatives. And you need ISDA documentation if you want to trade a derivative in the marketplace. And all of this actually matters for nature as well. I'm going to quickly hand off, but again, I want to talk about value one more time, because the southern part of the world has value far greater than large elements of the northern part. And we start thinking about and putting prices on water, on trees, on biodiversity. We find, where does that sit? I'm doing a lot of work out of Asia, and I say that my next door neighbor, Indonesia, is the left lung of the world, and obviously Brazil's the right. And Africa, absolutely critical. And we need their natural capital as a system-based world more than we need that 66 billion we've got sitting in the basement of the Bank of England. So how do we, and I'm hoping this discussion today, at least from a central banker's point of view, on how do we start tokenizing? How do we start building systems that actually create not only the value, but transfer that value around the world?
Asia has net imported gold from the West since April. The trade flow into China, 160 tons of gold. Into India, 80 tons. Into Turkey, 62. Thailand, 38 tons. Saudi Arabia, 20 tons. Malaysia, 4 tons. Hong Kong, 3 tons. Where do they get all this gold? Well, the UK sold 15 tons of gold from their treasury. 32 tons, South Africa. Canada, 33. Australia, 34 tons. And the United States of America sold 136 tons of gold.
Through the entire book. It's a great read, 300 and something pages. We're going to go through two of my favorite chapters, starting with your $300 silver call. Let's just get right into it, Peter. Why do you think silver is going to $300?
Well, when I did the research and wrote the book, I mean, some of it was even prior to writing the book, but I've looked at multiple indicators, and each time I look at these indicators and the different, inputs, I end up getting a $300 target. All these indicators tend to point to $300.
Okay, walk us through some of your indicators and your rationale, because I'm gonna be very technical with this interview here, because we've heard $100 silver, triple-digit silver calls by many notable people in the silver industry. Keith Neumeyer being one of them, a regular guest of ours. He's been calling for triple-digit silver for a long time. People are just tired of waiting for silver to even break above $50, which we haven't had since the 80s.
But why should the dollar rise when you've got all of this raging inflation? Because the dollar domestically is being devalued through inflation, while internationally it's gaining purchasing power against other currencies. So that means there's more demand for the dollar.
But when you've got inflation well above 7%, and with what we're seeing now, there's no way inflation is going to be under 10%, even the way the government measures it in 2022. So when you've got 10% inflation officially, unofficially, maybe double that, maybe 20%, if that's how much prices are going up, there is no way the Fed could claim that we need more inflation. And it cannot justify its excessively loose monetary policy on low inflation. But for now, what's going on in Russia is actually working to help somewhat and offset the situation, because it is driving some safe haven flows into the US dollar. And so that is keeping a lid somewhat on prices that are surging all around the world. But that benefit is not being enjoyed in Europe. I mean, prices are rising in the US despite a strong dollar. That means they're rising even more in Europe as the euro is weakening against the dollar, and other countries that are seeing their currency weakening. Inflation is breaking out all over the world. So it's impossible for central banks around the world to justify a continuation of this monetary madness. They
simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally. And we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities. And that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks. This will be a different economy. And one of the things we hear from companies is that they've spent a lot of time since the pandemic arrived looking at ways to have more effective technology and perhaps fewer people. So you're going to see some of that in these public-facing jobs. So,
my name is Tobias Adrian. I'm the financial counselor and director of the Monetary and Capital Markets Department here at the International Monetary Fund. We are living in transformative times. We are poised to see significant changes in cross-border payments thanks to new technology and the determination of policymakers. To discuss these changes, we are happy to bring you a half-day conference on the theme Cross-Border Payments, a New Beginning.